The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery's straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 106. Iron Game Chalk Talk is a weekly podcast where I bring you experts in the field to talk shop. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes or YouTube, or join the mailing list at ronmckeefery.com to stay up to date with the latest guests and anything else that I have going on. Super excited this week to have Dr. Mike Martino with us. Mike's a good buddy of mine going back to the South Florida days. When I was the NSCA state director for Florida, he was the regional director for the Southeast. And so we've stayed in touch through the years. Fantastic guy. He's on the faculty at Georgia College in both the undergraduate and the graduate programs. He speaks around the world. He owns a performance or fitness facility, strength coach for some of the teams there at Georgia College. And just does, well-rounded. And that's really what we get into in this episode, talking about how to balance all those things, how he's been able to help bridge the gap between kind of strength and conditioning and academia, and just tons of great nuggets in this episode. Before we get started, though, I want to make sure we recognize our sponsors. You got Ignition APG, you've got Sorinex.com, you've got EliteForm.com, and, of course, Play. And Play, obviously, I just got back from the Sorinex Summer Strong event, and, we walk in the door, and the first thing I see is a Play booth. And, they just constantly give back to our profession and doing it the right way. Rich and Brett and the rest of the gang there, they really are committed to helping the strength coach and then turn around and doing a fantastic job putting out a great product. Here's an example of what they just got done doing at Georgia. They did the inlaid, but they did, instead of doing the platforms, they put the G's down. They just got done doing Vanderbilt, so 2 SEC programs, and they're just, they're knocking them down. They all the projects that are going on right now, they seem to be involved in the project. And so if you are in the market for flooring, please reach out to Play. If you're not, please reach out to them and just say thank you for being a part of Iron Game Chalk Talk and helping us continue to bring this to you for free. Also, want to make sure you guys are aware of strength-ondemand.com. Strength on Demand is an online archive of strength and conditioning clinic presentations. And, as I am able to gather different clinic presentations, I put them in kind of a depository here and make it available to everybody, and it's just a great resource for coaches on their own time. If you're just kind of, if we got some downtime in the office this summer, or you got some vacation time or something along those lines, being able to sit back anywhere you got a Wi-Fi connection and watch a clinic is fantastic. So check that out, strength-ondemand.com. Want to make sure we get to Mike. Make sure you sit back, take lots of notes, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, guys, there he is. As promised, Dr. Mike Martino down at Georgia College, good buddy of mine, and the guy that we share a passion for the mixed martial arts and just all things strength, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show, spend some time with us, and it's just a guy that I've looked up to for a long time, man. So I appreciate it. It's exciting for me.
Hey, thanks, Ron. It was great seeing you at the Southeast Regional Conference. Great presentation. It was just good to catch up with you.
Absolutely.
We all go on our separate paths, but we're all in the same field. I've learned from you over the years, and hundreds of other coaches across the world, and I think that's how you end up being better.
No doubt.
No one knows everything.
Absolutely. Well, that's what's funny, is what, my wife always jokes around with me is that, I have no friends where I live, but like, I go to a conference and it's like all my long lost brothers, And she was the first, it was the first conference that she had seen, had gone to actually. So it was cool to see that kind of environment. But I agree with you, man. Well, buddy, hey, you got a great journey. So I want to get into that a little bit. You got, kind of a lot of things going on and you've kind of put a lot of pieces of the puzzle together. Talk about kind of what got you into strength and conditioning and kind of how you've morphed that into your current role.
Absolutely. I was a scholarship athlete at Furman University. I'm from Jersey originally, but I'm in the South now. Never went back. But I got a college scholarship to Furman University to swim. So, and just like you had, just like everybody, most people like in our positions have had a mentor, a primary mentor that changed their life. Mine was Dr. Tony Catarzano at Furman University. Good friends with Mike Gentry, wrote a book with him.
Yep.
And Tony basically kind of guided me while I was at Furman. And when I was an athlete, he kind of actually worked with me on learning about, resistance training. This is before, I think, the CSCS even existed. Or it may have been right when it started, because I remember I took it when I was an undergrad, when they didn't have the book, when it was just a notebook. So he guided me, basically took me through it, and then I started training teams as an undergrad when I was at Furman.
Wow.
And they were the non-football teams, they were the Olympic-based sports. And that's how it started. I started there, then got my undergrad degree, went and worked for a year in sales, which actually had an effect on me as a professional now. It's allowed me to kind of spread out my abilities and be able to generate, income from other areas.
Absolutely.
Because I'm a business now. I own Bodyplex. I've got 2 business partners. I brought a young guy in, gave him part of it, 38,000 square foot facility, 4,000 members, 200 personal training clients.
Wow.
That business experience I got for 1 year in sales has allowed me to be able to generate business plans, go to banks, get, $750,000 loan for a club, and, basically have it paid off now in 7 years.
Wow.
So, that journey it's been a hard road. I've gone through a divorce in it, but, that's part of it. When you're that passionate and you live and you work all the time, I was working 82 hours a week for 10 months straight. That's when I knew something needed to change. Went out, found a general manager, gave the guy part of my business. It was the smartest decision I ever made.
Absolutely. Well, talk a little bit about what you're doing at Georgia College as well.
Okay. So I'm a full professor here. I've been here 18 years. So I'm tenured. I'm a senior faculty. I really enjoy, the department that we're in. Great collegiality. I remember when I first came here, there were a couple senior faculty that kind of took me under their wing. Here we go back to the mentoring, right?
Right.
Now I've done the same thing for our junior faculty. Collaborate a lot, doing a lot of applied research, working with our undergrad students, working with our grad students, which we have a relatively new grad program that I'm the coordinator of. It's human performance. It's not like an ex-phys. It's more performance phys. Kind of like what Mike Stone did out, in Tennessee.
Right.
It's similar, but on the master's level, we have 2 applied courses of methods 1, methods 2. I mean, literally, we get in the weight room. They learn the Olympic lifts. They learn non-traditional battling ropes, Indian clubs, kettlebell, sandbag, you name it.
That was a missing when we went to school.
Yeah, and then the methods 2 class is speed, agility, and plyos. Wow. So they've got to get in there and do kinematic analyses. I'll mention that when we talk about the apps. I love Coach's Eye, man. I use it every day in the weight room with the athletes.
That's awesome. So, well, you mentioned in there the multiple roles. I mean, so you're at Georgia College, you own a gym, you speak, you have a website now, blog, and all these different things. And so, one of the things that we talked about a little bit off camera, but, as strength coaches, I feel it's very important that we create these multiple streams of income, because you never know when one of these might be kind of, so volatile. And in the academic world, it's not as volatile, but it can be. And the gym world is very volatile.
Absolutely.
But you never know when these things are going to go back and forth. What was your aha moment, or what did you feel like you was a reason why you kind of put those pieces together just kind of naturally?
Well, when I first came to Georgia College 18 years ago, I came and I turned the position down at first. But then a local physician that I had met during my time here, the short time that I was interviewing, he was like, man, we got to get that guy here. Because they were wanting to build a wellness center with the local hospital. Mm-hmm. And it was going to be a multi-million-dollar facility. Well, they just didn't have the expertise. Well, I'd had some consulting experience already. I traveled the world with the Olympic, swimming team.
Sure.
So I'd seen facilities all over the world. So they came back to me and made me an offer, and the CEO of the hospital worked with the actual president and the dean of the college that I was coming in, and made a deal. And I was able to be a consultant and be, a faculty member. So again, there was that extra, additional revenue stream for me. It was good for my family. So I then pulled the trigger the second time, made the move. Now, what's ironic is it didn't work out with the hospital. Like, that was when we went through the economy kind of crashed.
Yeah.
And so eventually, probably about over a 6-year period, that kind of relationship fizzled out. Well, then I started working on opening a club with a local orthopedist and a couple other professionals. That didn't pan out. A couple years later, I had the opportunity to buy the Bodyplex. Went to the bank, did the business proposal, the prospectus, 5-year prospectus, went in there, sat down with them, with the vice president and the loan officer. After a 2-hour meeting, there's like, it's done. And that's how it started.
Well, it's funny because, as a strength coach, you have to kind of be a jack of all trades, obviously, and so you'd never written a business plan before. You'd never gone and kind of done that stuff before. But, we have a tendency of making things like that happen when we're forced to. And unfortunately, I think as coaches, what happens is many times we wait until all of a sudden we're fired, or we go through a divorce, or we go through, some sort of life-altering moment to decide that we're going to go try to do this, and it's not the time to do it,
Yep. No, you're exactly right. And, the thing that I've noticed, Ron, about great strength coaches like you, Nick Winkleman, you just think about all the people that are out there that have actually, been training, Gary, Jeremy Boone, all of these guys have something in common. They're dedicated, passionate, driven individuals.
Right.
So, really good strength coaches make great business people because they're, like I tell my students, they're 3-dimensional thinkers. Most people are 1-dimensional thinkers. They think one way.
Right.
Very narrow-minded. 2-dimensional thinking is where you can really kind of delve concepts together. 3-dimensional thinking is like a periodization program where you're designing and you got to control speed and agility, resistance training, sport-specific practice, everything, nutrition, sports psychology, technical training, tactical training, all of that. That's 3-dimensional.
Yep.
Great strength coaches can do that.
No, it goes right in line with, we talked about that book that I'm writing, and 3-dimensional in 3 areas to be a successful strength coach. In my opinion, you have to be a great technician.
Yep.
You have to know how to teach the lifts, because you're typically a great technician. You become, you want to go teach people how to do those things. But when you get to that point, all of a sudden you fail typically because you're not a great manager, and you have to manage time, money, resources, all these things, and then lastly, you have to be entrepreneurial. You have to be entrepreneurial thinking and forward thinking and constantly sharpening the sword and all those types of things. And so you have to think all 3 ways if you're going to be successful in whatever you do, not just strength and conditioning, but business or any chosen endeavor. But
and education stands behind that. And education doesn't have to mean book smart, but I do think you have to have that cognitive foundation.
No doubt.
And most great strength coaches do have that cognitive foundation. They have that content area, right?
Sure.
But then they go into where it affects how they feel and what they believe, the affective. Then it gets into the psychomotor, which you're talking about, where now they're emphasizing technique, teaching skill, and now you become a complete individual.
No, that's absolutely right. I like that. Well, how does so. You're, and we've known each other for a while now. You're a coach's coach. That's what you are. But you happen to be. What made you choose the academic side of things, and and kind of take yourself maybe outside of the weight room, even though I know that you're in it.
Yep.
Outside of the weight room, and in front of the classroom, as opposed to being in there every day, blowing your whistle and counting to 10.
believe it or not, coaching got me there, because when I was a scholarship athlete at Furman, I graduated, went into sales for 1 year because my college roommate, who was an All-American, got me an interview. Shoot, they were looking for, dedicated, disciplined,
dynamic
athletes, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So I got that job, made a bunch of money, made 6 figures coming out. But the problem was I didn't like it. I gained 25 pounds. I was sitting behind a desk, and I was like, I got to change this. So made great money, but it's not always just about making money. So then what happened was I had the opportunity to actually go back and coach at Alabama. And that's what gave me that opportunity. So the coaching, I was recruited as a coach to Alabama, but had the ability to go back and work on my master's and PhD there. So I got my degrees paid for, but then I was a coach. I coached all the sprinters.
Right.
So
I
used my coaching abilities to actually get my education. And now all I try to do is bridge the gap between science and application. Still in the weight room. I'm also the really kind of the unofficial director of strength and conditioning. We don't have an official strength coach here at George College because it's a D2 school.
Right.
But when I first got here, I went to the men's basketball team, and I watched them. And the coach came over to me and says, "You're the new professor here, aren't you?" I was like, "Yes, sir." Very polite, kind of watched. And he said, "Well, what do you think?" And luckily, Coach Sellers, was an open-minded coach that had been coaching for years. And then we established a friendship. And then from there, I started training them. Then it moved to every sport. Now we work with every single sport. I have 5 GAs under me, and I have 20 undergrads under them that work with all of our team sports at George College.
Yeah, that's what's fantastic. And I think we've talked about this on the show. I had Brian Mann on the show, and we talked about it there as well. But, sometimes we get so consumed by our own world, that, and it's a daunting task. I mean, that's what people outside of college strength and conditioning, high school strength and conditioning, team-based strength and conditioning, they don't really understand is that it's not the X's and O's of the strength and conditioning. That's the easy part.
Yep.
The hard part is managing those people and getting them to reach their genetic potential and all those types of things. But so it is a very daunting task, and so you get consumed by it. But it's almost at the expense of these relationships that could be so rewarding and beneficial to your task. And so having a great relationship with your academic department, having a great relationship with your sports medicine staff and all these groups, if they're all working synergistically, it becomes a great situation. 20 undergraduates working with 5G, that's awesome. Nobody's got that.
Applied experience.
Yeah.
They're getting the true experience. My GAs, I give them autonomy too. All they have to do is they design their programs, they bring them to me, we sit down, we go over them. And, I've got 2 GAs that are going to work with Eric Cressy this summer in the same spot.
Yep.
I don't think that's common. Yeah. And these 2 kids are great.
Yeah. No, they went through the program down there. They were fantastic.
Well, Emeka and Katie, those 2 guys, they came up. So, but I think that's part because of our program, and we gave them some autonomy where they learned, they made some minor mistakes, but I kind of watched them and then help them. Right.
Well, and I think that's, kind of getting into a little bit of, we talked off camera a little bit about, strength and conditioning. And one of the biggest gripes I have about our profession is that we're not active enough in trying to fix the things that we keep pointing out as being the problems, and the problems being, we're losing control of organizations, or we don't like the speakers, or we don't like this, that, or the other. We don't like our job security or whatever. And yet, we're quick to point the fingers, but we're not quick to do any of the actions that come along with trying to change something. And so I think one of the things that as strength coaches that we can really make a big impact on and not really necessarily interrupt our daily lives is, some practical research, really kind of joining, some joint ventures with some academic advocates such as yourself and Brian and Pat Ivey and some of these other PhDs that we have in our community, and proving some things that we already know, or testing some hypotheses of things that we've been doing for years.
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example. Back when I was at Furman, Tony Catarizano taught me what we called speed weights. Now, this is 30 years ago. 30 years ago. We took weights. What's strange is those weights were about 30 to 50% of a 1 rep max. There's no research back then.
Right. 30
to 50% of 1 rep max, and we moved them as fast as we possibly could. And guess what? Our vertical jumps went up. Med ball, shot put went up. Power went up.
Absolutely.
Performance went up. And guess what? When Dr. Brian Mann came to the Southeast Regional Conference, I told him when we went out to dinner one night, and then when I took him to the airport, I thanked him for doing what he's doing, because he's making a difference, because he's doing that research that's supporting those things that, like you and I did before I was, a scientist.
Sure.
Now he's supporting those things. That's what we need to do. We need to team up. We need to collaborate. We don't need to point fingers. We need to work together as a team. It's not saying that a strength coach isn't as good as an academician, or an academician isn't as good as a strength coach. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Everybody's pointing fingers. You got to work together as a team.
Well, I think it all goes back to, it's time, and it's, maybe, it's just having some insecurity somehow, some way. And really at the end of the day, I'll be the first one, there's a great Marcus Anovich, who I worked with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, said something that stuck with me my entire life. And it's been that, and here's a guy that I was looking up to, was the head strength coach, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Coach Dungy, strength coach, the whole deal, right? And he's like, man, I'm just now learning how to ask the right questions. He's, going into his 50s. And I'm like, man, it's really stuck with me, my whole career. And, if we feel like we know it all, then, get out of the profession and go start your own thing, because you should be making millions, but I have much more questions than I have answers. I can promise you that. And I have no problem walking in and being like, hey, look, explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old, because I'm just not getting it, but I want to understand it, Hey,
you're exactly right. I did this maybe about 6 weeks ago, and it's colleagues like you, Jeremy Boone, Mike Bewley at Georgia Tech, Gary Schofield, Fred Eves at Battleground Academy. I sent them an email and said, look, I want you to look at my speed and agility program for my softball team. Mm. Look to see what I'm doing, because I like assisted training. Some people don't like assisted training.
Right.
I do, and I've had good effect with it. And it'll probably be an area that we study. Well, because of this not saying I know everything, I asked them, I said, honestly, give me your opinion of the program. I gave them my whole program. Mm. For what I do with the speed and agility with them, they all analyzed it, gave me comments. I addressed those comments, went back and forth with them. So I don't know everything.
Absolutely.
But when I have colleagues that I can bounce ideas off and talk about it,
Well, that's what happens is when you create an environment where you're constantly asking questions and there's a give and take there, then you don't have that insecurity. You don't have that environment where you feel like you're going to be judged. You can sit back, really ask questions without fear of persecution, and
sure,
and make your athletes better, which is ultimately why you're there. What would you say is the steps to go about doing that? So the strength coaches on their campus that don't have a Dr. Mike Martino right down the hallway, how can they start to bridge the gap? And maybe what are like 2 things that could be done tomorrow?
Yep. Number one, you got to get involved with an organization. I'm involved with the NSCA. I've been involved with the NSCA for nearly 20-something years. I started as the state director for Georgia right after Dosher, Mike Dosher, down in Valdosta State. Another guy that's helped me over the years. But you start by just getting involved with your local state chapter. Just get involved. You were state director. We were together. When I was the regional coordinator, we were together. So start with a state clinic. Find out where they are. See if you can't be on the state advisory board. Submit a presentation to the state director or the board and say, hey, can I come and present, or can I help? Right. Just help at first. Go in, be a volunteer. Then maybe once they get to know you, you open up a few doors, make some contacts. Then maybe you team up and do a presentation with someone that's presented before. That's the way it started. I started that way, and I've presented internationally in national conference. That's how it starts.
Absolutely.
That's what I would do it.
Well, I think, just walking in and I think I mentioned this in the presentation that this past one with the Southeast Regional was I'm making a point to really fully understand everything that's in my program, you know, and if I'm looking at something that's outside of that, then I'm asking questions about it, you know, and or if I don't have, maybe there's parts of my program, like for example, my conditioning, I know I run our guys too much. I do, you know, but I also know that we've been 12-1 in overtime games since my career. And so it's hard for me to give up that, give that up. The scientist in me knows, the practitioner in me knows that we're getting, our guys feel confident in the fourth and fifth and whatever quarters. And so, finding some ways to help support that, somehow, I'm searching for. I think there's ways that we can approach our academics on our campuses to where it's like, hey, look, this is an area of my program that I'm lacking a little bit of research to support it. Yep. How about you kind of help me formulate, a hypothesis here or some sort of experiment and grow with it.
You're absolutely right. But see, people have to be open-minded like you to do that. Because how many strength coaches are going to want to go to an academician, and say, hey, I'd be willing to sit down and discuss this concept, this idea. Would you be open to do it? And in many cases, it's got to be that strength coach that initiates that relationship.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I think that's where, again, getting involved and finding ways to develop relationships. It all goes back to relationships. Yeah. Leads to trust and all those types of things. And I think I think that's the biggest thing. What we do as a profession, we have to get beyond the insecurities of who knows more and who doesn't, because, we all have those conversations. I know I'm not the smartest guy in the world. But at the same time, I also know that nobody can get into the kid's head like I can,
That's right.
my kid's head,
Yep.
And so it's one of those things that I think we just gotta chalk that up and be like, hey, look, how can we help each other out? And I know you feel the same way.
Yeah. That might be a good presentation to submit to NSCA National. We could team up on that one.
Let's do it. Let's get into some training now. Okay. I know you're speaking a lot. You spoke to at this last conference on barefoot training.
Yep.
The biggest challenges, honestly, I feel with barefoot training for me is the logistics.
Absolutely.
Taking the shoes off, putting the shoes on.
Yep.
Finding the correct surface, being concerned about objects, all those types of things.
Yep.
What are some ways? And you had some great recommendations. What are some ways to incorporate barefoot training into your programs that are going to be practical?
Sure. We actually use it with almost every team now. Mm-hmm. We use it as part of the dynamic warm-up. And, I really got to give credit to Dr. Emily Spikel, who started the Evidence-Based Fitness Academy, because I went out to National in Vegas, and then she was doing a barefoot training specialist in California. So Melissa and then my graduate student, Emeka, came with me. So Melissa was like, hey, I'll go for a ride. So I rented a convertible, drove out to the coast, and we made it, a trip of it, did the barefoot training specialist workshop, and it was one of the best things I've ever done.
Right.
Because, I understand the concept of closed kinetic chain. I understand the joint-by-joint theory by Gray, Cook, and Mike Boyle. And Charlie Weingroff has really kind of led me into that direction more too. But the thing is, I never looked at it until I look at the actual foot out of a shoe, because that tells me a lot about how they actually, place force into the ground, because a shoe masks it. You don't see that. And I didn't realize it until I started doing the barefoot with my men's basketball team. And when I watched them do agility drills with their shoes on, I started to notice the guys that were everters could not change direction laterally the way that the guy were neutral or supinated, foot. So right there, then that changed it for me, because it was like an aha moment, like you said. I was like, all right, now I'm going to start assessing everybody. So open and closed kinetic chain with the barefoot stuff. I assess it. We do it as a dynamic warm-up, 5 to 10 minutes before practice, lifting, whatever we do.
So just kind of playing devil's advocate here then, okay,
yep.
You're spending 5-10 minutes out of a 24-hour day, out of however many days per week of them being in shoes and 17, 18 years of reinforcing it the wrong way. how responsive are you going to be to that type of training, or being able to identify those things and make it translate to the kids' psyche?
Sure. Great question. I'm glad you asked it, because that's what Emeka just did his thesis on.
Great.
Emeka looked at barefoot warm-up and shod warm-up, general warm-up, and barefoot jumping, vertical jump performance. Now, the sample size wasn't large. We only had 16 subjects, which, in our field is one of the toughest things we deal with.
Right.
But we definitely showed trends that barefoot warm-up and then a barefoot jump, vertical jump, and a shod, meaning with shoes, vertical jump, actually improved. And there is science behind this. This isn't just something, it's very science-oriented. Dr. Ben O'Nig out of Canada is a huge, researcher in this area. And I'm going to be going, hopefully, up to Canada to present with Guido Van Rijsjen for one of his regional conferences, and it'll be on barefoot training. But you can use it in your dynamic warm-up.
Yeah.
And what it does is you have a different tactile response. There's small nerves, so many in your foot. Well, once you put a shoe on, you rob yourself of those. You dampen the vibration that you sense from the ground.
Right.
Take the shoes off, you do it. Jeremy Boone's got a guy that I won't mention his name, that just got picked back up to play pro ball, signed for like something over $2 million, and had some ankle issues. Jeremy and I were looking at it. He had the guy send me pictures, him standing barefoot at 1:30 in the morning at the hotel. So we looked at it, I didn't get to assess him personally, but
right.
Sure enough, Jeremy started to implement this, with this player.
Yeah. Well, I don't get me wrong. The benefits to me are phenomenal. It really is. And I think that's the right point. And that's how we've done it in the past as well, is implemented into our dynamic warm up. Because that way you show up, they're all got their shoes off already, and it's a matter of you're given extra 2 minutes to put them back on. And I obviously anytime I think you can get into the sand and use the sand as well, and be barefoot in the sand, I think is fantastic as well. But you talked a little bit earlier, we're going in and out, but I think it was something that I want to make sure we come back to about kind of work-life balance. I mean, you were working 82 hours, you were, you went through a divorce, and I spoke at the whatever, I can't remember what conference that was, but I had the entire room, 400 plus strength coaches stand up and said, look, sit down if you know, or you yourself or know somebody that's been divorced because of this field. And I think all but like 5 people sat down.
Yep.
And it's a shame. I mean, I know, it's one of those things that obviously relationships and all that, but our careers don't help that. Yeah. I know you've used mixed martial arts and self-defense and things kind of as a work-life balance. Yep. What are some of the things that besides that and along with that you found to kind of, you're definitely a changed man having gone through all that. How would you, what advice do you give somebody that's starting to experience the same things that you did early on?
Yeah. 3 things. Number 1 is my spirituality, obviously. You know that about me. Number 2 is having some type of healthy release, right? So jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I started that about 9 years ago, and I've been in and out. Sometimes I had an injury, I had an ACL tear, and then that put me out for 9 months. Came back, and then sometimes work. Sometimes you have to do everything that you do. Like I'm teaching 18 hours this semester. This is but I'm helping out the younger faculty being a team player.
Sure.
Even at my point in my career, had 7 research projects going at one time at this semester when we were up at Southeast Regional. So I stayed up till 4 working on my presentation because I had to clean it up a little bit. I was staying up till 1:30 on Thursday night working on one of theirs that they had to present on Friday. So it is a balance, but I think the martial arts, and then the third thing, and really I'm not saying it's third because the martial arts comes in front of it, is family. And like people like you, Gary, Jeremy, those are really the family that you have. And then your immediate family, obviously. Sure. My kids, I got 4 kids with Melissa now. So, I mean, we got 4 teenagers in the house. It's pretty hectic, but I enjoy it, because pretty soon they're not going to be there.
No doubt. 17, 15, and 13 for me. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I think that's important. I think we're all sitting around dinner that night, and what are we talking about? We're talking about each other's wives and kids, and that's what it's all about for sure. Well, we always kind of end these shows with some resources. So give me the best piece of coaching advice you've ever received.
All right, best piece of coaching advice. I would say probably gain knowledge first, then follow that up with application.
Absolutely.
And I think that's probably what my career is all about.
Starts with that for sure. What about this is something new that I'm going to add to the show. So you're the first one I've asked this to.
Okay.
Give me a typical interview question. So you're interviewing a GA. Give me a one of your go-to trip 'em up questions.
All right. Well, this one I literally will look them straight in the eye and I'll say, "Tell me your philosophy of training." You got 5 minutes. And the first guy I did that to, man, he went blank. And he's a sharp kid, but he went blank for about 30 seconds.
Sure.
Because when I said philosophy of training, 5 minutes, everything started running through his head. You could see his eyes spinning.
Right.
But, I think if I asked you that question, you might sit there for a second, gather your thoughts, then you'd nail it.
Right.
And have that 5 minutes. So that's understanding what you know and you can verbalize it. That's one of my best ones.
Absolutely. No, that's great. What about give us a book, inside strength and conditioning, and one outside of strength and conditioning.
Okay. Ooh, good question. I can't give you one book. You can see behind me right there.
It's awesome.
Man, there's so many books that are good books. I could just rattle them off. I mean, super training to McCardle catch and catch text to a high performance training to movement from Gray Cook, DNS stuff from Yonda. I couldn't give you one book.
Give me one outside of strength.
All right. I would probably say, let me see if I can pull it up because there's some good ones too, besides the Bible. Malcolm Gladwell wrote it, and I heard him speak last year. Blink.
Yeah.
Blink.
Yeah,
I think
Blink.
that's a really good book for people who have to interact with other people.
Yep.
And I never knew that I could thin slice people, but I could do it before I ever read the book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a greater appreciation for it. But I think that's a good one, especially for young professionals.
No, I agree, man. No, a lot of Gladwell stuff's really, really good.
Yeah. Very thought-provoking.
Give me you mentioned the app earlier with Coach's Eye. You got another one?
Man, Coach's Eye is the bomb. I love Coach's Eye. Now, Dwarffish is great.
Yeah.
UberSense is great. There's a couple other ones that are out there too, but the only reason I really like Coach's Eye is because when I speak either internationally or within the country and travel across to California, Coach's Eye is Android app and Apple.
Yeah.
So you can get either one. So if
That's
you go
good.
UberSense, it's just Apple. If you go Dwarffish, it's just Apple. This way I can cross, and everybody can still access and use it. And I'm serious. I wasn't making that up. When we talked about it before we got on, I use it every day in the weight room and out on the field, calculating stride frequency, stride length.
Yeah.
I use it all the time.
Oh, that's great. What about a website that you typically check out or use?
I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to research. So, obviously I go to the NSCA website and look through the journals. I'll peruse through, and sometimes I'll go to Mike Boyle's website, or go to Eric's, website. Go to Guido Van Rijsgem's website, look at some of his stuff with kinetic integrations. The FMS website.
Got it. It's awesome. Well, so I know you got a million things going on right now. I mean, you just came out with the website. You're about to go to Ireland and go speak overseas. And just kind of let everybody know what you got going on and how they can find you.
Okay. So in May, May 15th through the 17th. I'll be up in Denver, Colorado. Lauren Landau will be there.
Yeah.
But Dr. Speichels put together the first U.S. Barefoot Training Summit. So that'll really be a great environment. If someone wants to kind of go outside their comfort zone in the box, definitely that's an attend to conference, because it'll be an eye-opening experience, I think.
Absolutely.
So that'll be in May. Then obviously July I'll be down at National. I'll be presenting on small nerve activation and dynamic warm-ups with Dr. Speichel at the National Conference in Orlando. Then in August I'll be in Vancouver, I'm pretty sure, in Canada with Guido for the Northwest Regional, I think it is, conference. And then in November, if anybody really wants to take a big trip, I'll be out in Ireland at Satenta College with Liam Hennessy and Sean Hogan. We're working right now on that. Robert Linkle's going to go. Gary Schofield's going. Lauren Landau's going. I'm going to be there. Ian will be there. There's 4 Euro speakers and 4 American speakers.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I put together the whole itinerary agenda for them, and we're working on it right now. So we got to get it all finalized, and that'll be a great trip. No doubt, man.
Well, and that was something that we didn't touch on, but I want to touch on briefly. Is
sure.
You're doing all that speaking, and I get this question a lot, and I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just by getting kind of involved, grassroots, and kind of growing from there, but. For the young strength coach that's listening that wants to become the accomplished speaker that yourself is, or some of those other people you mentioned, what are some things that you would suggest them do right now?
Probably, I would say is the focus on one area, almost like a research agenda.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling you to be narrow-minded, but I would really kind of get an area where you can specialize a little bit and really become an expert. There's so many self-proclaimed experts out there, and that's that. This is a funny thing, you'll like this real quick, is the heavenly music concept, I call it, where when you think you know everything, you hear your own heavenly music and you start to levitate off the stage. That doesn't happen. So but become an expert in one area.
Right.
Start some research. Don't just have it be anecdotal. Research what you're actually doing. And start to, become more of a so-called expert, but back it up. Back it up with science, and then go from there.
No, I give the same advice to my staff, and not just for speaking, but for trying to go out and get a job as well. Is what's your unique selling proposition? What makes you unique? And if you can come as being an expert in a specific area, that makes you somewhat unique.
Absolutely.
You have to be a jack of all trades, but you also, it's great because as a manager, I have to bring in people that are going to make me better in certain areas, for sure. But well, man, you're one of those guys. You make me better, and I appreciate all that you do. And people don't really, you know it, and I know it, and a lot of the people that you mentioned know it. But there's a lot that goes into giving back as much as you do. At the state level and a national level, obviously starting at an international level, and it just takes a lot of time. And it's not something that you're getting all of a sudden. You're getting all these interviews on, Good Morning America or whatever. You're getting RonMcKeefery.com, Iron Game Chalk Talk interviewed. But I appreciate it, buddy, and I know everybody else does too.
I appreciate it too, Ron. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, buddy.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out RonMcKeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.